The Ninth Amendment states the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In other words, if it's not enumerated in the Constitution, if it's not worded within the Constitution as a power of the federal government does not have the right to regulate that issue, those goods. And nowhere in the Constitution does it mention intoxicants. Nevertheless, as the civil rights movement grew throughout the 1950s and 60s, so did the Justice Department's interest in prosecuting drugs as a crime under the Commerce Clause. In the 1960s, there was a governor of New York known as Nelson Rockefeller. And Rockefeller had been a long incumbent and, of course, comes from a very powerful elite family. And in the mid-60s, he was behind in the polls in an election for governor of New York. He was really the first politician, or at least modern politician, to use a drug scare as a means to gain votes. He declared in what could really be seen as political genius that there was a scourge of heroin affecting inner New York City. What Nelson Rockefeller had landed on was a concept known as race baiting. And race baiting is when a politician uses coded terminology to suggest that black and brown people are the problem without actually having to say that black and brown people are the problem. And the New York electorate in the mid-60s knew exactly what Nelson Rockefeller was referring to when he said there's a scourge of heroin in the inner city. And it spoke to them, as the civil rights movement had made incredible gains at that time. Now, always remember, drug use was occurring throughout American society. Drug use has always occurred throughout American society in every culture. Drug use is an aspect of human culture. And so to imagine that it is more of a cultural practice of certain cultures than other cultures is really missing the point. It isn't. It never has been, and it never will be. Drug use is human. When Rockefeller won by a landslide, race baiting became a major tool of American politicians. In 1972, Richard Nixon was running for president as an incumbent, and he was behind in the polls. And he took the page from Nelson Rockefeller. He declared that there was a scourge of heroin in every inner American city. He was the man to take care of it. And it really is the birth of what we now call the modern war on drugs. Nixon won in a landslide. Heroin abuse continued and only grew. As globalization took place, planes were now in effect, and more drugs were coming into the nation. There's no doubt about that. They were being used everywhere.